guys, it's Pete and Roxy from Awakening Education here. Today we have beautiful Tyler on the show all the way from the US. We wanted to touch base with him and share with you all because he has amazing talents and abilities, and one of interest is the channeling of Ryoke. And welcome, Tyler.
Awesome. Thank you, Pete and Roxy, for having me on your show. This is a lot of fun, and I always love talking to people that are on the other side of the world. I feel like it's such a cool bridge to explore. So happy to be here with both of you.
Can we start with asking you how you got into this awakening journey personally for yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I sort of started this process out not really looking for spiritual transcendence or evolution. I started getting into spirituality specifically to experience pleasure, which might sound like a weird thing, but my intro into spirituality was psychedelics and that whole world of like cannabis, psychedelics, so on and so forth. And that was sort of the culture I grew up in when I was like in high school. And at a certain point, those experiences triggered something in me where I started noticing my personality was shifting. I started becoming a little bit more detached to things that were happening in the physical reality. Different tasks and things that used to bring me pleasure started becoming more empty. And I started naturally gravitating towards different activities like meditation, yoga, crystals. I couldn't really tell you why, but I would just see those things. And then I was like, I need to be working with that. I need to be doing that. So this sort of kind of party animal lifestyle actually introduced me into spiritual concepts and activities. So I just started slowly exploring that more and more. I started working with a friend who was kind of like a hippie shaman, and we were doing breathing exercises and pranayama and yoga before it was like really, big everywhere. We were like diving into a lot of this stuff. And then at a certain point, I stumbled upon Bashar. I had raised my frequency sufficiently enough where that information just entered into my reality. I didn't know Bashar was a channeled being. I thought this was just a person who was very smart with their eyes closed, just talking. And then I realized this is an entity being channeled. And right around the same time I'm making that connection, I started seeing triangle UFOs in my area in Delaware where I was living at the time. And they looked like constellations, just like an equilateral triangle made of these three stars, these 3 points. And I'd be driving and I'd be looking at it saying, oh, wow, that's like a perfect triangle in the sky. And it was huge, like very big. Very, very large. And it kept following like my vehicle. No matter where I would drive, I could see this thing overhead. And it happened twice. When I was in Delaware on 2 different occasions. And that's when I like realized there was like something going on. And that whole spiritual path eventually led me into a complete, like, I call it like a Kundalini awakening, where pretty much my, like, I don't know how to say this in any other way than like my pineal gland like exploded open. And I just started having like open-eyed visions. I could see energy all around me. Like it was like full blown, my spirit guides being like, hey, listen, this is what's happening all the time. We're going to make it so obvious that you'll never forget it. So you never question again if any of this is real. It was like so HD. It only lasted about like 10 minutes and then just totally back to like surface physical reality. But like the effects from that experience were very profound. Like I was pretty much walking around like a crazy person. Like I was like just always dancing. I would go up to my parents and be like, time's not real. This is all a projection. And they're like, what has happened to our son? Oh my God. They were terrified. I was having a lot of fun. And ultimately they sent me to this sort of like program to focus on like my goals and my education. It was sort of like a life chiropractor, not like actual chiropractor, but in terms of what it does to your life, it was like a chiropractic adjustment for my life. So I would kind of be out of the psychedelic hippie community and more so in a community that was more goal driven and based in accomplishing one's dreams. So I made that shift and then just started pursuing education. I started getting into acupuncture medicine and nutrition, these types of things, all while still keeping the spiritual practices going. I kind of left the psychedelic world behind and was just going off of meditation and breathing exercises. And I just practiced channeling while I was doing that, you know, and eventually it brought through a variety of different beings. And then at a certain point, about 2 years ago, it brought through Ryoke. So he's been who I've mainly been focusing on ever since. That's like a little bit of how I got started, and how I kind of made some of these shifts from, you know, level to level as I went.
It's a great pattern though of what I've noticed with people, you know, the starting off, you know, not really looking for spirituality as such. And I love, like, in the beginning, it's almost like trying these different things to escape or look for something else exciting, to then one day realize, hang on a sec, I can use this to not run away from something, but discover something within me. You know, that next step where you go, oh, hang on, I can use this to connect and to access greater information and the divine or whatever it may be. And even if it is using some sort of substances or something in the beginning, I love that as you move up and get higher vibration, you were talking how you're starting to drop that away and have it happen more naturally. It's a natural state that we can learn to be in without needing to have those things anymore. And then, like, wow, the connection gets so strong that obviously is now for you.
Yeah, at this point, there's like never really a moment of like feeling like totally disconnected. Like there'll be those moments that are like not super blissful, but that connection and that awareness of that has been like immortalized, where it's like I never feel like I'm not plugged into the spirit world, and I never feel like I don't have the ability to use the resources that are available to me to transform whatever I encounter. And I wouldn't have been able to come to that place through psychedelics. I like had to put that down and learn how to walk, you know, spiritually speaking. Psychedelics, like they say, it'll show you the top floor of the building. It's like the elevator, but then it'll bring you back down. And now you got to, you know, take the stairs. You got to climb it, you know, and that's kind of what my experience has been with this.
Yeah, we had a similar awakening experience taking plant medicine in Costa Rica, and that just opened our eyes to all of this stuff. And without that, that wouldn't have supercharged our awakening. So it's really interesting how it can assist you and, you know, change your reality and make you look at things differently, different perspective, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So can you tell us about Ryok? Like, how did he come to you? Where's he from?
What's like day one when you go, I don't know, do you go, is there anybody there? And then all of a sudden you hear a yes, or like, what happens?
Yeah, that's a good question. So by the time I started channeling Ryok, I was very familiar with how to channel. I had been channeling for probably a few years. I started channeling Pleiadians first. And when I first started, it was exactly what you had mentioned, Pete, where it's sort of this shot in the dark. You're like, let's see who like answers, who picks up the phone. I made this like cardboard colored marker, like Pleiadian contact symbol, you know, that I had gotten from something Bashar actually had channeled through. It was like a phone number for the Pleiades. So I made this thing. I like slept with it under my pillow. I would wake up in the morning and meditate and like gaze upon it. And then one day I had been, you know, practicing channeling for a while. So I said, let me put this between my feet while I channel, and let me just go in and see what comes through. This is the first time I had channeled an entity. The first time I channeled, this being comes through and says, we are Mira from the Pleiades. We're here to be of service. And they start just opening up about their wisdom. And then I get on Google and I type in Mira Pleiadian, and there's other people that have channeled this. And I've never heard of it at all. I like knew of almost no channeled content besides Bashar and Abraham Hicks at that point. So I was like, okay, I'm like doing something that is like a real thing. I'm tapping into something here. So I just kept practicing and practicing. At a certain point, I started channeling the collective consciousness that Bashar comes from, which is the Sasani species. And I was getting very positive messages from them. People really liked it, you know, so I just really liked it as well. I just kept doing it. I kept channeling this Sasani collective energy, and they're sort of this hybrid race. They're a blend of humans and then the beings that we know as the gray. They're a 50-50 mix of both of them. So I started channeling their world spirit, so to say. And at a certain point, I was like, this is like really fun. Like I like this information, but everyone's kind of got like a person. I was like, I kind of got like a collective. I was like, that is cool, but I want to get a little bit more intimate with this. That sounds like it'll be much more satisfying. So I put that request out there. I'm like, all right, let me talk to one member, just one person. And what they said to me was like, we will do that. We'll let you talk to just one being. We'll let you channel one being, but understand when you are channeling collective consciousness, it's like you're looking at a fire in the distance and you're interacting with the smoke. When you interact with a single being, it's like you are getting closer to the fire. You're getting more specific. And they're like, so understand that fire will burn up anything in your life that is not in alignment with you. So understand, if you channel just one being and you build that relationship, everything with your life will change. And I pretty much was like, well, sure, that's what I'm going for here. I want that. So that's what I started doing. And sure enough, not only has like my spirit evolved exponentially, but my whole life has become the channeling. I mean, it's to a point where every day I'm doing a session. Like it's like non-stop, and I'm very grateful for it. I love it. But I mean, they were not kidding. Like it literally has become, it's really literally transformed my life. And now this is a primary center point. I didn't see that coming, but it's beautiful and I'm happy. It's what the result has been.
Yeah, that's so amazing. So is he on a ship, or is he, what planet is he from? Can you give us a little bit of intel around?
Yeah, so he is from the Sasani species. They have a home world, and they also have many different colony planets and worlds that they're a part of. He is with a group of different beings. Some of them are members of his species. Some of them are from different hybrid species. And they have hybrid children aboard the craft. So the hybrid children are sort of their own group that are designed to get our species used to ET energies, but without like overly freaking us out, because they're partially human and they're childlike. So naturally humans are a little bit more accepting of them. So he's on a craft with these different hybrid beings and the hybrid children, and he takes them around the planet and they enter into what he calls bubble realities, which is not quite the physical reality. It's sort of an overlay upon it, where him and the hybrid children can get out and they can interact with some of the extra dimensional types of beings that are here. They can use the earth chakra points to enter into different parallel reality versions of the planet. And this is specifically to educate the hybrid children about Earth. And it's also so Ryoke and the other hybrids that he's with can deepen their relationship with Earth, because ultimately for them, open contact with our species isn't just them with us. It's also them interacting with the whole planet, which apparently we only experience like the tiniest percentage of. So there's a lot here that they're interested in. And that's a little bit about him and what he does. He frequents Sedona. That's something I know. When someone most recently asked him like where he has been today, a client asked him that once. He had said Tibet and the Bermuda Triangle. These were the two places he had said, you know, so it does seem like he does move around the planet. The answer's oftentimes Arizona, but in many instances, it will be these sort of unexpected locations.
Yeah, right. That's so interesting. Is the ship like, how big do you feel the ship is? Has he ever explained that to you?
He has not gotten into that. I understand it to be large. And it's interesting because the way their technology is that the ship to us on the outside might look like it's some kind of like standard size. But when you go in, the way their technology operates, the inside of the ship can physically appear to be larger than the ship itself. So they sort of have this like multi-dimensional effect built into how it's designed that allows for there to be like more space. When I see the ship in my mind's eye, like when I kind of project into it, it is like quite large, like many hallways. It's not like some tiny little submarine by any means.
Yeah, I get that when I go up to ours. Like it's just like there's another room behind the room, but like they only show a certain amount just for your like vibration at that point, if you know what I mean. But yeah, it's just so exciting, all the technology. Is there any machinery or technology that you've seen when you've gone up there before?
That's a good question. I don't interact with him in that way very often. Most of the times when I interact with Ryoke, it is specifically to bring through information for clients. The other times I interact with him is when I know we have like a monthly transmission coming up and I'm like, hey, what do you want to talk about? And then he'll like, you know, I'll get this big download. But other than that, I don't dabble in his reality as much as people might think. And a lot of that has to do with the fact I think I spend so much time with him like every day that when I'm not channeling him, I'm sort of just going on my journey, living my own life. And I do have like a very deep spiritual practice that I do. But that to me is different than like directly interacting with Ryoke and his world. So specific technologies I haven't seen like too much of. He'll oftentimes talk about those sort of things when he's being channeled through me or when people ask him. But off the top of my head, I can't think of anything super duper special that people probably haven't already heard of, before.
It seems that when people speak about things not of this world, I don't know whether to call it ETs, aliens, etc. There's the lights in the sky, like you were describing the triangles in the sky, like you were driving in your car, you looked out the window, you saw that. There are people who claim that they've seen, wreckage of craft that have crashed, or even the US Navy releasing that footage of the Tic Tac thing and all these amazing things. So there's that. And the greys, so to speak, the ones that seem to vibrate slow enough that we can see the ships, we can see the beings if they're the beings that are present. And then there's another level which is like the light beings, interdimensional, which people often access during very deep meditation, breath work, ayahuasca, DMT, other sorts of things. And they get these light beings, and these light beings often have profound messages of love and hope and interconnectedness and healing and expansion and etc. Like you're moving back to self. Is that something that you can sort of comment on about the different stages or interactions that we may have with things that are, not of this world, so to speak?
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of the experiences are reflective of people's level of consciousness. So for some individuals, their level of consciousness is only high enough where they'll be able to only perceive maybe like YouTube footage of craft and like government disclosure things, and then maybe like certain books on like ETs or YouTube videos. And that will be, one level that exists that's available for perception. However, someone who has like a higher level of consciousness might be able to access, right, like an in-person sighting, or maybe they start having dreams where they're like flying with ETs, or maybe, right, like you had said, light beings start coming to them in meditation. It's all a matter of someone's frequency that determines what version of the ET narrative they're going to perceive. And ultimately, what determines a person's frequency, right, is their willingness and choice to be who they are, to follow their heart, and to live that in every area of their life, And if someone's doing that, they can perceive the highest levels of this whole storyline. But for a lot of folks, they're still really buying into a lot of negativity. So their ability to perceive some of these light being extra dimensional levels is more limited. So their experience of that ET narrative spectrum will also be a little bit more limited.
Yeah, well, because the reason I ask is because then you get to your level, and you mentioned before that you've got quite a structured spiritual practice that helps to must keep you in this vibration, must keep the connection. Just sort of briefly for people to get some sort of understanding, how do you keep the sanctity of that connection? What from your daily waking in the morning, what are you doing? Hot showers? Are you under the tree meditating? What's going on?
Yeah, it's I use a form of meditation that's based in bliss. It is a bliss practice, because with Ryoke, to actually channel him, I have to be in a state of bliss. Like if I'm in like this like sort of negative state and I try to channel him, I will actually get tired. I'll get physically fatigued because I'm trying to keep up with him. So I myself first have to be in this like beautiful state of love and passion. And then when I'm in that place, I can just channel him and like literally endlessly. I could just keep going. So the practices I do are Taoist practices in nature. The most basic one is called the inner smile. And it's all a matter of feeling love and joy in your heart, forming a smile on your face, and then using your eyes like spotlights to shine the light inside of your body into your organs, your cells, your DNA. And because your body is mostly water and is like a big crystal, it holds that energy. So it's like you're holding this positive charge for the entire day. And then the more you do it, the more you evolve in the practice, the stronger it gets. And that energy starts to infinitely carry over into every level of your life. And the smile is the most basic level of this lineage that I'm a part of. You can just keep going, and the practices get more sophisticated. You start being able to have like essentially like multidimensional orgasmic states, you know, in your body and out of body. And then that just becomes so programmed into every area of your life, it becomes challenging to actually be in a negative state. On like it gets to that point where you're like, I have so much high frequency goodness, I can just dish it out like wherever it's needed. And that's been my approach. That's how I've gone into this. And it's absolutely helped my channeling. The more I gave myself to those practices and the more I took the advice that Ryoke was giving other people and applied it for myself, the more rapid my acceleration became. And now it's to a point where it's like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's going to be awesome, you know?
Yeah.
And is that sort of like, are you doing that once a day, twice a day? How often?
I was doing those practices twice a day for a while, but now I do them maybe once a day. I do about an hour, 10 minutes in the morning, and that seems to be plenty, because a part of these practices is letting them work. Because once you do the practice itself, they call it inner alchemy, right? You're making this change. Yes. And then once you're finished, you want to let that practice kind of continue happening in the background while you live your life, so you can then apply the power and wisdom from the practice into your day. And if you're, in my opinion, if you're doing too much practice, it's like you're not really giving yourself an opportunity to ground in the change. Kind of like if you're always taking like a plant medicine, right? It's like, oh, you know, are you learning from it, or is it just sort of all this energy?
Yes.
So it depends on the nature of the day. If I'm doing like a lot of sessions, like yesterday, I had probably about like 4.5 hours of working with clients. So because of that, I like spent more time doing the practices. I would use them to generate more chi. I would use them to keep my spirit like very high, so I could, you know, emotionally be there for the clients. So it sort of is done as needed, but in general, a minimum is an hour a day that I do.
Yeah. And, you know, in the spiritual awakening process, when we talk about different modalities, breath work, or, you know, I love that form of meditation, by the way, almost starting with your smile and then using your eyes to get your eyes to make every cell in the body smile. Like I just totally get how that would make you feel. But so often we have people who they go straight to the modality, but they haven't started with looking at themselves and doing the work to, you know, clear the density, clear the pain, the hurt, the disappointment. Have you, is that something you worked on, or did that slowly happen over time? And what, I just want to know what you think about that, skipping that important point of accepting who you are, what you've become, crying out the fact that you might have had all these things happen in your past, and getting clear thy vessel before you then sort of expand.
It's so important. What you're talking about is like of the utmost importance, because these technologies are process accelerators. They're energy multipliers. So if someone is carrying trauma or a bunch of repressed anger, and they go doing these practices, they don't have like a guide or a teacher, I mean, they can really open up some doors and maybe not necessarily know how to deal with that. So I think making sure you're in a good state of mind, you feel happy and healthy, I think those are all important foundations for going into these practices. I mean, most books I've read that talk about, right, developing these like esoteric abilities as like a lifestyle, the first thing they'll say is get your whole life in order, right? Make sure like you have like a steady income, make sure your house is clean, make sure your health is good. Like they literally say that, because if you don't deal with those things, then you try to do this path, your energy is going to be dispersed trying to work on all this. So having that foundation is super important. With the smile, any level that can be done at, you can't do too much. And the reason being is they say the sunlight of the smile transforms and melts the ice of the negativity. So the smile is good at any level, because you're going into yourself. So it's not like you're trying to bypass or go to another level. You're literally going in. And this is where, you know, the subconscious is, right inside of our tissues. So when you go in and you're smiling there, you might find more love, you might find more joy, but you also might find like hatred. You might find shame. And the formula is the same, right? You feel it, accept it, smile, and just breathe into it. Give it love, because that's what those things are asking for. And that's why they cause all the craziness. They're like children acting out, saying, hey, I need like a diaper change. I need to be held. I need a bottle. That's what all these things are. And that's why everyone's acting crazy. They're trying to get love. So the smile is a way of being able to give that to yourself. So I think as a foundation, that technique is really good for anyone on any path. Really, it can be useful.
Yeah, you go.
I was going to ask you, from all of your channeling and your journey, what's some of the most profound things or information that's come across to you in relation to the universe or humans or whatever comes to mind to you now?
One of the things that I think really struck me is the experience that who we think we are is oftentimes an illusion, and that the willingness to let go of who we think we are is the key to embodying the highest version of ourselves. There have been versions of myself that I have held on to as my primary identity that now I look back at and I say, oh, that was actually like a lie. I was holding on to a lie, and I was still doing all these spiritual practices. I was still, evolving myself, but I was holding on to these sort of foundational level energies of identity that were not representative of who I actually am. And I think that that's one of the most remarkable things that I have found in this practice, that the most fundamental aspects of ourselves sometimes are masked by these stories that really aren't true. And it just takes time and experience and perspective to really reveal those things. So I think that has been one of the most empowering things to experience, because it makes me realize, okay, if I can let go of some of these things, or if I can accept myself in this way, then that means people maybe who I judged as being incapable of changing also have this ability to take back the layers. So that's been one of the most powerful things, just realizing just the depth of falseness that people hold on to kind of masquerade around with, even though it's oftentimes well-intentioned, right? They believe they need to do that out of some type of self-preservation or need to be accepted. I would say some of the other things have to do with the knowingness that it can be really easy, that like we don't have to struggle to create the lives that we prefer, to be ourselves, right? There's this sort of, I think, at least in the United States, there's this idea of you have to really earn your way, and it's hard work, and you got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And it's that has been true, and many people still create that. But now in my experience, the ability to really transform and just sort of manifest whatever is you really need has been so available, to the point where I feel like I can breathe and relax, where I guess, a few years ago, even a few months ago, I felt like those things were so, it felt like they required so much, and they almost felt like processes somewhat outside of me, but now I'm like, oh, this is just all me. I just got to change the energy, change the script, change the action. And now I am on a totally different frequency. And now my whole life is showing me things that are confirming that. Yeah. Those are probably the two biggest.
Yeah. And just coming up through that density and kind of almost doing it backwards, the ascension, because we're probably all incarnated as light warriors for this mission, and to learn ourselves kind of backwards is, for me, like you were just saying then, just is very profound. And we're going to look back on this mission and journey and go, oh my God, we actually did that, that density rewind in a sense,
It's very interesting too. Those two examples you gave are very much the process we're talking about, where people need to really get in contact with who they've become and what they are as a person. That we say dropping the ego. The first thing is forget everything you think you know about yourself, because all those labels and all of those expectations and all of those stories that we tell ourselves are just that, right? They're just a story to help us to sort of navigate somewhat through life. As soon as you start to go recognize that and pull it apart, and you break yourself back down to what you really are. You know, you go to this next step, which you were saying, where you recognize, well, hang on, you're a creator being, you're a spark of the divine. If I have this ability to be able to raise my vibration, and then like attracts like, all of a sudden the things that I want, instead of needing to get them out of force, going out there and make it happen, you just kind of allow, because you are that, and it just comes to you. You know, it's like when people are trying to find the right partner, they're like, why can't I find a good person? You know, people are now sort of saying the common advice is, well, be the sort of person you'd want to date, and then you'll attract the right person to you. And like that principle applies to a lot of different areas of life. What would Ryok then say is the last step then? You're starting to go quite well on the process, on the journey. What are some of the overarching things that as an awakened soul you could learn? What are some of those principles where, like, when you're really starting to get your head around mastering the self, what are the principles about connecting to the divine?
Well, there's a saying that they have in magic where at a certain point in development, the adept will see every encounter and every experience as a direct interaction with God. And I think that is the side effect of living in such a way. At a certain point, you become so in love with yourself and with the world around you that the sense of there being a difference begins to go away. And all of a sudden, that perception of God becomes known, in that you're feeling that oneness between you and the other people or the plants or the animals. And that oneness is the God frequency. And at a certain point, that perception just becomes more and more and more consistent until it's no longer this wavering thing. It's a thing that's there, whether you're in a high state or a low state, it's there. You cannot unsee it. And that's like, in my opinion, that's like the ultimate gift, because in that state, you can never be lost. You can never be lost, because everywhere you look, it's that connection, no matter how good you feel, no matter how bad you feel. And I think that's the level that the species is eventually moving into, because I think that's the collective perspective that will ultimately heal our world, when we begin to see each person not as this like separate part that is totally exclusive from us, but as this beautiful reflection that's here to play a divine game where we get to learn and grow together. And I think that's, in my opinion, one of the many milestones of the spiritual evolutionary process is perceiving that connection. Oftentimes that awareness comes sort of at the cost of letting go of a lot of stuff, because the thing that blocks that connection is exactly what we were talking about earlier, the different, masks that people wear that keep them feeling extra separate. That's what blocks that awareness. So oftentimes, to really see that oneness, there is this shedding that absolutely has to take place. And for some people that can be devastating, but hopefully they have a community, and they have teachers, they have people that can support them, so they can let go of those things, in the confidence that they're in good hands. So it doesn't feel like this scary, death process. It can feel like a butterfly, or rather a caterpillar liquefying into the cocoon to become the butterfly.
Yeah, I think it was Ryok and yourself that was sharing the information about the Oversoul, and how as our frequency is rising, our togetherness and our oneness is coming, we're not separated anymore, and then we realize we're part of a bigger Oversoul. Can you share any information around that?
Yeah, and that's actually really interesting you asked that, because it has definitely been something I've observed recently. At a certain point, you begin to see parallels between other people and yourself, and you can begin to see what I call oversoul signatures. You can start to see the patterns of the oversoul expressing through multiple people. So it's almost as if, like, I don't know if you ever had this, right? But you will see someone maybe that physically looks like someone you know, or maybe even physically looks like you. And it's like, hold on, that's a different person, but it's totally like their energy. It even looks like them. That's part of the oversoul signature. You can start to see that consciousness, that macro consciousness expressing itself in another way. Sometimes you might meet someone who maybe looks very different from you, but they are totally reflecting back to you like everything that you're going through, right? Their journey is like hyper paralleling yours, but in like a different way. Maybe they're a different gender, or maybe they're in another country, but the journey and the themes are so similar. This can be another sign of the Oversoul, revealing itself through that person. The Oversoul being the idea of a macro consciousness that expresses itself as multiple souls simultaneously.
Yeah, it's just so interesting. I love it so much. We've got still so much to learn, don't we? Mm-hmm. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I really like that point. It's that point sometimes too where you meet someone for the first time and they seem strangely familiar. I'm sure that comes into it. It's like you feel like you've known them for a long time, but you might be meeting them for the first time and you can't sort of logically make sense of it, but you feel like it's like you feel like you know them, you feel like you're old friends, and I'm sure that must be another thing which people are starting to notice more and more. Have you noticed actually when you do your monthly updates on, it's not quite the state of the nation, it's like the state of consciousness and the planet, isn't it? These monthly updates that you do. But is there a common theme that you're seeing at the moment?
Well, the major things that have been consistent is Ryoke says right now we're in a major disclosure process for extraterrestrials, and this is something that will soon be completed around 2023, this disclosure process. And then once we're finished with that, there's going to be so much evidence, the population will essentially have to be like, okay, it looks like there's other beings and they're here. And then once that awareness has spread through the collective consciousness, then the ball will be in humanity's court on how soon open contact happens. Because in order for that open contact to occur, there has to be that level of ET awareness in the collective consciousness. So that's the disclosure process's purpose. And then it's all a matter after that of our species really working together to raise the frequency. And then that is what leads to the open contact, because we sort of have to meet these hybrid beings halfway. So that's been, I would say, the most primary thing that he is repeating to many people in private sessions, in the monthly transmissions. It's something he is continually just talking about. And I think that's because he, like many other beings, really want the open contact. I mean, I think they're very eager for it. So, like I said, for many reasons, not just to interact with us, but like our entire, planet. So he's very much invested in that. So that's a big thing that he is talking about. And the main thing too, he says, is in order to create that reality, it's not as if you have to wait on the world to change, right? Because the world, the collective is, even though it's made up of a bunch of different people, it's ultimately your projection. It's ultimately your energy, because you can only experience your version of it. So he says, really just to focus on yourself, focus on your energy, focus on your passion, whether things are crazy when you look out the window or if things are super peaceful. He's like, keep staying in that state, keep driving it in, don't leave it, stay in that positive state and just watch the show. Watch everything just transform. You don't need to know what it's going to do. You don't need to know how it's going to look. Just focus on your passion and your joy, and you'll be of service to everyone you need to be of service to, and you'll essentially be completing your purpose, which is to be you. So those are the most consistent things I see him saying to people these days.
Yeah, and what a beautiful message that is. We're very big on encouraging people also, like they hear all of this, right? And it's exciting. And then when they go back to their day, right, their day to day, they jump off the call, they listen to the inspiring clip and they're like, oh, wow, this still sounds so good. In day to day, people sometimes, share with us that they feel frustrated or they wish they could do more to connect more, to get centered, to block out the noise. And we often say, go back to the fundamentals, but people are frustrated. They say they can't meditate because they've tried and they're not visual, or they can't stop the thinking brain and they think too much. They can't get relaxed. The most basic. What would you say to someone who is looking to elevate, looking to connect more, but they keep saying to themselves, I'm trying, but it's too hard. I'm trying, but it's too hard,
I have two answers. The first one is spend each day in nature, because if you're spending each day in nature, like an hour a day in nature, you're going to be slower. You're going to be more relaxed, and you won't have so much psychic, emotional tension built up because the planet's going to take that and recycle it. And it's so healing because the planet will take your negative energy and will grow flowers with it. And the earth sees it as a gift. So you'll get blessings. You'll get these like forms of abundance just because you went outside. You know, it's such a win-win. And I think anyone who's having trouble meditating or feeling calm, that's like the basic thing. I think if someone does that, it can really change up a lot, especially if it's a part of their practice. The other things I would say are to maybe consider getting into some type of moving meditation. So there's of course Tai Chi, which is sort of a moving meditation. I prefer the Qi Gong, the energy exercises, which are in many ways the foundations to Tai Chi, but these are exercises that are designed to distract the monkey mind with movement. So you're moving and you're not really thinking about anything else, because if you do, you're going to mess the movement up. So it's a good way to connect with your breath and to move. And for people that just can't sit still, right, that's a great way to meditate, but without having to sit still, you know. So I would say, you know, maybe look into moving meditations or the inner alchemy. It's called the Neigong in Chinese. It's inner practice, really, and it's sort of like energy meditations that involve the body and this sort of psychic kinesthetic dynamic where you're guiding energy through the body, you're feeling it move. And this is another way of distracting the monkey mind. And the Qigong, the Neigong are both designed to distract that mind, but to also build energy so you can go longer, you can go deeper. And when you have all that energy, now you have power to be able to make some bigger changes in your life. So those would be the major things I would encourage people to focus on if they're having difficulty, because not everyone's designed for seated meditation. I know some people, one of my favorite teachers, his name is Damien Eccles. He talks about how he sat like the Zazen meditation for years, which is just the Zen monk style, the samurai style. You're just sitting there watching your breath. He said, I probably benefited like only so much from that. But as soon as I started practicing ceremonial high magic, I like had all these breakthroughs, all these enlightenments, all these realizations, and it's so different. Ceremonial high magic's all about chanting. You're chanting, you're drawing stars with the sword finger in space, you're projecting energy. It's like Qigong, but the Western version. And he, like many others, has totally grown his consciousness through it. So another tip would be make sure you're doing a kind of meditation that you like, you know, because if it's not the right style for you,
yeah, finding the right modality for the elevation is so important, huh? Because there's so many we can try out there just that suits different people.
That was a really good answer. I really liked that because, you know, I feel for the people who are trying, but they're struggling. And I think those examples are actually really good examples, because it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to do it if you can't sit still and meditate. You just try a different way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So how can everyone get in contact with you if they'd like a channeling or find you on YouTube? I'll drop all the links in the below, but do you want to share that?
Sure. So I am available for private sessions through email. You can email me at Ellison, that's TELLISON 700 at gmail.com. That's the fastest way to get in touch with me. My YouTube channel is called Health Thyself, where I do monthly Ryoke transmissions that are live. So you can type in questions and me and my hosts will take the questions. And we also just upload videos, you know, sort of sporadically there based on, you know, when I feel messages coming through, I'll just make them and upload them. So check that out. I'm also on Patreon, where you can catch all replays of my paid live events. Those are posted on there. It's like a live event archive, as well as special inner alchemy and Qigong videos that train people how to get in touch with the energy. That's also on there. And that's just Patreon, Tyler Ellison, just my name. So those are the three major ways to connect with me. And of course, we will be having an event this month on the 21st, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a Ryoke paid event called Into the Eye, where he's going to be getting into how to channel through automatic writing and how to use that to connect to negative energy inside of yourself so you can give it a voice to express itself, so you can learn from it, which ultimately helps you to release it. So that's going to be a really fun transmission. So I hope to see some of your audience there. And I thank you both for having me on today. This was great.
Yeah, thank you so much for being of service and bringing this profound information down for all of us to share and learn and educate and elevate ourselves with. And yeah, it was so good to have you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you both. Thanks for doing this and for giving me an opportunity to share with all of you. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your morning, and I look forward to connecting more.
Cool. Thank you.
Good to talk to you, Tyler.